she read to me all the time. So I learned to just like go to books. If I had any sort of problems, I would just like go to books. I would escape to books. When I was depressed and anxious as a really young kid, I would go read a book and I would enter that character's world and I would just leave. You know, it was incredible. And so when I got older, I started kind of doing that when I was like, wait a minute, I'm feeling really anxious and stuff like that. And I discovered there were books about that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. So
yeah, and then that just brings to light the importance of what types of books, you know, you're actually running to. And so some of those that you had the opportunity to get involved with were helpful for you, and thankfully led you into a direction that, you know, a path that maybe you didn't design for yourself, but yet that book helped you understand what, you know, that next step needed to be in that path. And so let's say your middle school, you were homeschooled your entire life? Or did you get into?
I think I went to like public kindergarten and maybe part of third grade.
Okay, but through high school and things like that. Yeah. And were you able to get involved in different sports or different competitions types things in high school, or none of that in high school either?
No, we there was just a lot of there was a lot going on with the family. I mean, there's
catapults and
8 kids and so realistically, like, I think I was in basketball for a while and then I got pulled out. I did swimming maybe when I was really young for a while, but then I got pulled out of that too. So like I never really stuck it out, or I never really had the opportunity to stick it out with the sport. I also didn't really care that much, right? Like I was just not that interested in sports and all that sort of thing. I kind of always had this perspective of like, I'd come into a sport and be like, okay, so we're just like making up rules, and then we're all gonna get really like excited about like when we perform well within that rule set. I don't know. It just felt weird to me. So like it just did, like I just didn't care that much, you know?
Yeah, no, that's fair. And you mentioned that you were reading books during high school and during that time, but what else were you passionate about?
Oh, like everything. Yeah. I was excited about everything. Yeah. So I was always a very like thematic person, so I would be really excited about a theme, right? So my brother and I played a lot of Legos when we were kids. Every morning we'd wake up and we'd say like, what are you into today? And one of us would be like castles or Indiana Jones or, you know, spaceships or the Arctic. And so we would build that all day, right? So I loved themes. I would go to the zoo. Like every time I went to the zoo, I was so excited because they would have like the lions exhibit would kind of look like sub-Saharan Africa, and I was like, oh, it's all like, you know, themed out, and so I loved that stuff. I loved design. I loved all of that. I would catch a theme really it'd really take root in my soul, right? Like I watched old Jackie Chan movies and I was like, oh my goodness, like Police Story, and like, oh man, I got so excited about the stunts and all that. So I got into parkour for a while. I hurt myself in so many different ways. It was insane. So yeah, I did all sorts of stuff. I mean, I would always have a different hobby. I would be doing, you know, I'd be doing parkour, and then I'd be making pulleys for a while and just really obsessed with like levers and Archimedes and pulleys. And then I'd be like, trying to build models of dinosaurs, and then I'd be like, okay, now I'm gonna build like I built a trebuchet out of wood, you know, like bunch of 2x4s and nails and rope and all this stuff. So tried to build like this life-size trebuchet. It was like 12 feet tall, and yeah, so I did all sorts of stuff. I was just always doing something.
Nice. And it sounds like very creative and story oriented, where you're trying to, you know, reenact almost something that you read potentially in a book or saw in a video, or, you know, someone else said, things like that.
Totally.
What are some of the potential, as you think back, like what are some of the skills you were learning through that? I mean, you mentioned Legos, you mentioned building with 2x4s, you mentioned several different things around, you know, bringing something to life. But what are maybe some of the skills as you think back? You're like, okay, that's maybe something that I was already starting to learn at a young age.
Definitely creative problem solving. So, you know, when you're working on any sort of project, whether it's a trebuchet or Legos or whatever, you're going to come across like a creative problem where you're like, oh, shoot, these pieces don't connect right. Or like, as it turns out, I don't have enough leverage on this thing to get it to fire a watermelon, you know.
Yeah.
And I found that like the process of problem solving just means digging in. Like, keep trying something until you realize that, oh, that thing doesn't work anymore, and then just think of another way to do it, or ask questions of someone else or whatever, and then just do that as fast as possible, and then just do the next thing as fast as possible until you've reached something that does work. But I think it's that, like, what I realized, I think I realized this pretty early, where there's this tendency to procrastinate on taking the next step. And I realized that, like, oh, it takes me, like, let's say it takes me 5 tries to creative problem solve, right? Well, if I keep trying number 1 too long after I've realized that it doesn't work, or I get stuck on number 3, or I take too long a break and I'm like, oh, well, this isn't going to work or whatever, I'm not going to get to 5. I don't know that it's going to take me 5 tries. It might take me 10 tries. It might take me 3 tries. It might take me, 7 tries. But the more you delay any part of that process, the slower the going, and the less likely you are to finish before your momentum runs out. So I learned, I think, pretty early to, like, keep hammering at a problem, especially while you have the momentum to do it. Just keep trying to change your approach until you get it.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for breaking that down, as well as telling us a little bit about your approach to problem solving as you were younger. And it kind of steps into what you mentioned earlier about the being able to step into fear a little bit, and being able to jump into something even if you don't know what the outcome's going to be, right? And you know that if you make a decision, it's great, because then you can make another decision. Now you have new information that you can make a better decision the next time.
Totally.
So it's understanding that it's like, I might not know the right answer, but I know what I think is heading me in the right direction. Let's go that way.
Yes.
And you were doing that in high school with different projects that you were working on, different skill sets that you were learning. Now, with that, did you tell me a little bit about your work as high school, college, whatever? When did you get into kind of that first, all right, now I've got a paying gig, a paying job?
Well, I don't necessarily remember what my first job was. I did a bunch of stuff. I sort of was interested in having a job at a young age. I liked the idea of working on stuff and making money for it and all that. I wanted to work at the horse farm across the street. We lived in the country, and so there was like a horse farm there, and I was like,
so you weren't downtown Grand Rapids?
No. We grew up in a farm area.
Okay.
4-H was a big thing and all that.
Yeah.
I never did 4-H.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
those go together.
But no, I wanted to work at the. This is actually hilarious. I wanted to work at the horse farm because I was like, it seems like the work is like lifting heavy stuff, and like I loved animals. I was obsessed with animals. And I actually ran this like newsletter about animals that I sent out. I would just like ask people if they would be on my newsletter. I'd be like, would you like to subscribe to my newsletter? Like in person to people. And I'd get their mailing addresses.
I was going to say, this isn't an email.
No. This was before, that was a thing.
Yeah.
So I would print these things out. It was like 5 pages or whatever. And I would mail them to like 40 people for like 6 years. But I do all these like things about animals. And so I was really into animals. I was not necessarily into horses specifically. I didn't really care about horses specifically, other than they were animals and I was excited about them. So I wanted to work at that horse farm. My mom was like, you're going to fall in love with a horse girl. Yeah. And I don't like horse girls. So you're, and
horse
who
girls
knows?
are needy.
Who knows? She might've been right. Yeah. I don't know. Who knows what she spared me from, but,
so you didn't ever
I did not know. I was not allowed to do that, but that was I think that was my first inkling of like, I really want to do it. I really want to like work on this or get paid for this or whatever. And, so I worked at a couple places. I remember doing some teaching really early. Like there was like a homeschool co-op or whatever, and I started teaching there. I somehow ended up getting in as a pharmacy tech. That's actually kind of a lofty position to get like pretty early. But like one of my friends left and was like, "Oh, I recommend Cameron for some reason. And I was like, oh, okay. And they were like, oh, well, you don't really have the qualifications, but your friend said you can do it. So here, come on in. So I did that for a while. I just did a few odds and ends. But one of the things that was really a big deal is I started a lawn care company with my brother. That was pretty early in my, we worked at an orchard for a while together. And then we started a lawn care company with like a push mower and